Barrister Ghana, I'm coming to you with a kind of different twist to that question. You were a critical part of the processes that led to the fruits we're bearing today, with ICC actually being more intentional when it comes to seeking for justice. Looking at what was done, what were the elements that you thought were employed during the process to have made your team a success? And also, now that it's global, it's everywhere in the world, that the ICC is after the perpetrators of the genocide in Amazonia. How can this affect our foreign policy, or should I say our diplomatic endeavors during this time of war? Barrister Ghana, please talk to us.
Yes, Director Paddy, thanks a lot for the questions you are asking. And when President Sako was speaking, there's something he said that kind of piqued my attention. President Sako said, a lot of things happen because God says so. And if God says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And if it's not in God's timing, it's not going to happen. With his manifest humility, he articulated that, and that is so true. And when you look at this filing that was done, and before I highlight the three of us who worked painstakingly on it from beginning to end, sometimes you just have to give credit to somebody else that is due credit. And I'm going to give credit to somebody that just out of transparency and candor, somebody who started with us from the beginning, but somehow dropped off along the way. Bo Herbert, who is a very veteran journalist in Cameroon. Bo Herbert participated at the infancy in assisting to catalog some of these crimes that were perpetrated. So let me put that out. But we worked painstakingly for a period of about 6 months, meeting weekly and sometimes daily to analyze, to assess. Because when you're filing a complaint, be it a suit, a complaint, a criminal, a civil suit in law, there are very many facts that you have to consider. And Barrister Funso talked very incisively about the issue of jurisdiction. So we met to analyze each target of our complaint, each perpetrator, and there are at least, and I'm not going to talk about the maximum number, there are at least 95 individuals within the hierarchy of the Cameroon government who participated, fostered, administratively okayed, or gave action towards the perpetration of this crime. So in terms of high-ranking officials, there are at least 95 of them. There are more than that, but I'm just going to say there are at least 95 of them. So we had to assess each of these individuals to see how they fit into this puzzle of genocide. And this complaint that we're talking about is about a 160-page complaint. So it's a very voluminous complaint containing evidences, dates, the various massacres, which Barrister Mbesa has named some of them: Ngabu, Jiamot, Kumba, Kembong, all of them, and many, many other. And we analyze each of these massacres individually, attaching the facts, attaching the dates, describing the circumstances, and providing evidence to the highest degree of specificity that could guide investigators to what we were talking about. And there are pronouncements that have been made by the government of Cameroon that are also, that we keyed on them and we cited them in this filing as uncontroverted and on unambiguous evidence, uncontroverted and uncontradicted. For example, if we look at the case of a massacre that took place in the southwest, or in the south region of Amazonia, where there were some massacres and the government was trying to refute it. And it was General Nguini, the general within the Cameroonian army himself, who said that that wasn't done by the Ambazonian fighters. It was done by the Cameroon army. So there's uncontroverted, uncontradicted evidence, even through the pronouncements of members of the government of Cameroon, that kind of demonstrate the complicity of the government of Cameroon and members within the government of Cameroon in their participation towards this genocide. But I also want to speak on the expertise of this panel and the dedication of these three lawyers that you're looking at. It wasn't easy. I'm a businessman, and I had to dedicate a lot of time away from my business, especially as I don't want to say anything detrimental to my two learned colleagues here, but they studied law and they practice at a time where they are not as adept in computer skills. I come from a background where I I did IT. I'm an A plus engineer. I'm a systems engineer. I'm a certified software engineer. And so we had this combination of their experience. Barrister Fuso knows Cameroon, knows the players very well, practice in that environment, and has access to a lot of information. Barrister Mbesa, again practicing in Cameroon, knows the players very well and has worked within the judicial arm of the UN. He worked in Ivory Coast, so he understands these processes very well. I, for one, studied law in the United States. I got my Juris Doctorate here. Understands computer technology, understands research very well. In fact, when I was doing my Juris Doctorate at the University of Kansas City, Missouri, that's when this struggle started in 2016. I dedicated my thesis, my final thesis out of law school, to the situation in the southern Cameroons. And so I'd already gone into the UN files, all of those transcripts in the decolonization committee, and research our situation that could tie into this filing. And with my computer skills, it enabled combining what the experience that Barrister John Frunso has and the experience that Barrister Mbesa has into one powerful locomotive that finally delivered this complaint we are talking about. And I saw President Sako read that acknowledgement, which we all have copies of that, you know. But what our Ambazonians need to know is that we have copies of this filing amongst us, as well as in very secure locations. So this filing is something which, if the ICC had not acted on it now, it would have died. The evidence is still there, and we continue to enrich that evidence. And as Barrister Mbese has said, if you're listening from Cameroon, if you're part of the Cameroonian army, and you have information that speaks to these massacres, you saw what just happened. The ICC opened a complaint against the government of Cameroon because of what we did. If you have information that enriches this process, you now know, and I repeat, you now know that finding a way to communicate and supply this information to us, to Barrister Frunso, to Barrister Mbesea, to myself, it's not going to go for naught. We know how to direct these incidences to the right quarters. So again, it was a combination of expertise, God ordained experiences at different phases of our lives, the passionate dedication of us to deliver this, the willingness to sacrifice time away from our families, away from our activities, away from gainful employment, to be able to put this together and deliver it, that made a difference. And make no mistake, this was done under the auspices of the interim government. Because when we were done assembling this complaint in a thorough legal format, if I could share my screen here, I'll go into those files and show them to you. So it's not something that is here. It's just that I cannot share my files here with you. If we
Yeah.
when we are done, the fees to mail this complaint to the ICC came from the interim government. So make no mistake, it wasn't that we worked on it, but the mailing of it was done hand in hand by Barrister Funso, who was in the Maryland area, working with
Yeah.
President Sako to ensure that these files
Yeah.
were mailed and to ensure that these files got to the ICC. And one other thing,
Correct.
we did not just file these complaints with the ICC because, again, jurisdiction is a big issue in law. For example, here in the United States, if a case has federal jurisdiction and you file it in state court, they are going to throw it out because it does not have the right jurisdiction. So I can explain jurisdiction for days and for days. But we research to know legal forums around the world, nations that accept ICC jurisdiction, because ICC jurisdiction is very specific. But we also had to research nations that can also prosecute on a case if the ICC does not prosecute, they can do it. Case in point, when they filed the case against Hissine Habre in Europe, Senegal could prosecute that case because Senegal also accepts ICC jurisdiction. So what did we do? We researched all of these nations that accept ICC jurisdiction, and we filed in all of these nations. So this same complaint you're talking about was not just filed with the ICC, it was filed with Senegal. It was filed with South Africa. It was filed with Germany. It was filed with Norway. It was filed with England. It was filed with Canada. It was filed here in the
It was
United
filed
States.
with Norway.
Yes,
Norway.
in Norway, yes. So there are 12 separate
Belgium.
jurisdictions in 12 separate nations that received these filings, and a lot of them acknowledge our filing. Canada did, Norway did, a lot of other nations, Belgium did, you know. So again, if Mimi Mefo is saying something that is not consistent with the truth, it is not necessarily that she is lying. It is that she just doesn't know, because we were not doing this for publicity. We're not
Now,
doing this
Pastor Ganan, let me come in there. Let me come in there a little bit because there's an aspect of this question you have not answered yet, which I want you to answer. But before we get to that aspect, I want us to look at very clearly this letter of acknowledgement is clearly on the screen. We still have people debating. And the challenge President Sako is providing to the world, to those claiming to take responsibility, is not saying for you to give a receipt of your filing. President Sako is saying show proof of acknowledgement because not every letter can be acknowledged. So I want that it's very clear on the screen. Um, I can observe that some of these individuals, there's a certain Frank Will watching from one of our social media platforms right now, saying that the ICC said they received it, the complaint from Pan African Forum. We need a document to prove that, and that's where I want you to talk. But then conclude by telling us it's all about the genocide in Amazonia. How does this affect our endeavors? What when we try creating relationship, seeking for advocacy and propaganda, that's all diplomacy. This ongoing investigation, how does it affect merit or the demerits of it in our diplomatic efforts? Talk to us, please, in conclusion.
yes. Again, uh, that letter you just showed there, and all of us have copies of that letter. That is, this is, look, this is not about if we did it or if we didn't. This is not about us. This is not about Barrister John Frunso. This is not about Barrister Bessa. This is not about Valentine Ghana here. This is about Amazonia. This is about the people who were killed, the mothers who were raped, the old people who were burnt, the people who were burnt in their homes in the dark of night, the people in Gambu, the people of, this is not about us, because if it were about us, maybe we would have not sacrificed this time. Now, to address the question, to answer the question that you asked, how does this help our efforts to regain the sovereignty of Amazonia? Look, Paddy, when this, maybe some of you guys don't believe it when we say this struggle is a God ordained struggle. The testimony of my own life. Sorry, I'm going to distract you, and this is not about me, but I just want to give you the testimony of my own life to tell you that this is a God ordained struggle. Before this struggle started, I was very successful in corporate America. working as a manager. God called me out of corporate America to go to law school. My colleagues in corporate America thought I was crazy in my 40s going to law school. 2016, 2017, when this started, I went into the office of the dean of my law school. When I saw people being killed in Bamenda, I practically broke down in tears. She wanted me to take some time off. I said, no, I will not. That is why I decided to take the issue of the Southern Cameroons as my final thesis in law school. To me, that was not my decision. To me, that was God's decision. And for God to have put I and Barrister Frusso and Barrister Mbesa together, you need to know how painstakingly we worked to put these two together and how our diverse strengths help make this a success. But how, again, does this contribute towards the regaining of our sovereignty? The demonstration is now being done in so many different forums, documented that our coexistence through annexation with French Cameroon is not working. It has never worked from day one, and it has resulted in a genocide, which has the capacity of another bigger genocide if we don't exit from this bastardized union. Remember, when Pa Augustin Dangam and his colleague filed the case against French Cameroon, v Dangam, I mean Augustin Dangam v La République du Cameroun, a ruling that was done in 2009 in Banjul, where they declared that the people of the Southern Cameroons are a distinct people in Cameroon with the right to self-determination. It was also said in that ruling, if you read that ruling fully, is that if these people are not treated right in Cameroon, they have the right to take steps to exit the union. So drip, 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 ruling after ruling, forum after forum. If you look at what they call the UN Security Council forum that took place, I think it was in 2001 or 2021 or so, where it decided, the United States brought this our case in that forum, and by a vote of 11-4, the 15 members of that extended Security Council voted in favor of taking the issue of Ambazonia in the UN Security Council. Only France, Belgium, and I think China abstained. So this is a accumulation of facts and incidences pointing to the fact that Ambazonia, that the erstwhile Southern Cameroons, does not belong to that union. And Paddy, that is why the government of French Cameroon is running away from an internationally mediated forum, because the mountain of these evidences, the mountain of history, the mountain of rules, which is where law starts from, which is where legitimacy starts from. Legitimacy starts from the fact that what is the rule? What is the rule that applies to this situation? The two main rules that apply to this situation are UN Resolution 1514XV and UN Resolution 1608. Those are the two main rules. And those rules speak highly against our union with French Cameroon. Then when you add the body of all of these evidences that are happening, adding to the fact that now governments in French Cameroon or individuals within the government of French Cameroon will start paying a very high price for keeping Ambazonia. It all speaks to the freedom, the regaining of our sovereignty, and the reaccession of our independence sooner than later. But also, when you're listening to this, when you're listening to what we are saying, when you see the body of what we have done, and you are an Ambazonian, and you have not contributed to this struggle, and you know there's an Ambazonian state army that is fighting to liberate us, and if you haven't contributed to the Ambazonian federal government, headed by Dr. Sako, that is enabling all of this to happen, you need to start chipping in. I don't care if you're in Yaoundé, if you're in Douala, if you're in Kumba, if you're in South Africa, if you're in Beijing, because all of these actions are going to cumulatively free us from French Cameroon. And that is why you
Yeah,
see us, all of
we
the
have a question that somebody is from the audience watching us is going to ask you people to conclude, but that will be the last part of it, which will be very soon, and that will be the last thing for this. But I want to bring up a video of someone
Adi,
who
Adi,
happens.
Adi, Adi, just
Yes,
1 minute. Let me just say, because it's good to give credit where credit is due. Let's
yeah,
give credit to our comrade who started the Ambazonian Genocide Library. His name
Genocide
is
Library. Matt Atungo.
yes,
Correct.
yes,
Thank you.
yes. Matt
that's
Atugong.
an amazing.
Let, let's
The
give credit to
importance
Matt
of that
Atugong who started
platform
the
can never be
Ambazonian
overemphasized.
Genocide Library. Yes,
Dr. Matt Atungo.
Dr. Matt Atugong. Yes, let's give him full
God be his
credit.
helper.
Yes,
And
God being his helper indeed. God
that
bless him.
platform is updated every single day that the genocide
Yes.
is in Amazonia.